getting started. So I teased that I had a sort of icebreaker question that I'm curious. But um, who would play you in a movie? Do people give you like a certain actor or actress that you are similar to, or one that you're like, oh, in the movie of my life, I would love this person to play? Maybe I'll start with Denise.
Oh, somebody who people, say it's like a Kate Bosworth, James King, Jamie King. I get
Mm,
that often. I don't know if that's I'm not against them playing me in a movie for what it's worth, but I don't know if I've ever really thought about
okay. Well, I'll give you some time to think about who you would want, but Paige, do you have someone in mind?
It's funny. I feel like my loved ones have said this a few times in my life, that Emma Stone, and I think it might be the red hair and it might be
Mm,
some of the quirks. I'm not sure. But I've heard that a few times. But Denise, I can totally see that too. Kate Bosworth and
very much so. And like
classics.
lovely compliments to you guys as well. I think that it fits really nicely. I think for me, I've gotten like Uma Thurman, but I would love a Paul Newman to play me, just for fun. Just to see how it goes.
I love that.
I think he's excellent. Okay, well, we're 2 minutes in. Maybe we should get started if that's all right with you all. Welcome to everybody joining us to the It's Always Good to Invest in Your Employees webinar. We're very excited to have you. If you have any questions today throughout the chat, please feel free to put them in the questions sort of form in the chat for us to see, and we can address them as we go. But today I am joined by Denise Seal, the Director of Corporate Communications and Government Affairs at BBB Industries, and Paige Strand, who is the Director of Marketing and Communications at Ayar Labs. So starting with Paige, maybe you can give us a little bit of an overview of your role and how you got started in comms, and then we can move over to Denise.
Absolutely. So I've been in comms for over a decade now. I've worked across a lot of different industries, and that has suited me well for my role as director at Ayar Labs, leading the marketing and communications team. We're an investor relations firm. We're based in Vancouver, Canada, and we specialize in clients and industries all over the world. So that background of moving from industry to industry really plays a part here. I'd say day to day, I'm focused on the strategy, processes, external comms, internal comms. And because our organization started 2 years ago, a lot of that has been building from the ground up. So a lot of really exciting learnings and yeah, just having a lot of fun here.
Awesome. Denise?
Like Alex said, I'm the Director of Corporate Communications and Government Affairs at BBB Industries. And kind of the short answer of what BBB does is we're an automotive part sustainable manufacturer, or a sustainable manufacturer of products. We're global. We have just over 10,000 employees, and I imagine, talk about this a little bit today, with the majority of those employees not based at a desk or with email access. So for my role at the company, I oversee the flow of communication internally and externally. My goal is really to make sure the company maintains a positive image. We all adhere to our brand guidelines, our specific messaging, and then I also monitor and analyze proposed legislation, emerging issues, trends, and to determine and advise our executives and leadership team on the potential impact to the company.
Amazing. Thank you both. And I am Alex. I am a corporate account executive here at Staffbase, based out of Brooklyn. And I'm very excited to talk to these two wonderful people today about investing in our employees. So for the agenda today, we are going to be running through positioning the value of strong communication channels between management and employees, identifying the benefits of investing in digital comms tools, analyzing ROI of internal comms strategy, and then also demonstrating the connection between high rates of employee engagement and low rates of workplace risks and costs. So our very first question to get us started is, what sparked your need for strong communication channels? And we'll start with Denise.
What sparked our need is COVID. It exposed some gaps that we had. When we were, as everyone was doing social distancing and changing processes and protocols and closing locations and and whatnot, we had the way we reached our population without email addresses was word of mouth. We would talk to their supervisor, who talked to their supervisor, who talked to their supervisor. So who knows what message they were getting in the end. So COVID really exposed this weakness in our process. And it's really how we've just operated for the past 30 years. And everybody was so used to it that it was just the way things had been done. So we realized that we had to find a tool that allowed us to communicate amongst those with email, but also how do we reach our 6,000, 7,000 employees who are on a production line, who are in a plant, in a distribution center. And so COVID really sparked our need for a platform like StaffBases.
Yeah, 100%. I can imagine a lot of people identify with that. You mean a lot of folks that I talk to on the day-to-day, similarly, COVID was a thing that like surfaced all of their gaps that they had not even been cognizant of before, or they thought they could get away with or would fix later, and then it became super, super urgent. And as much as that's a not so great impetus, it's great now that companies recognize the value of having these tools in place and are making sure that they're getting them, which is great. And for you, Paige, I know that you might not have as many non-desk workers as Denise. So for you, what sparked your need?
Definitely. So with IR Labs, we're entirely remote. We're based all across Canada, although we're headquartered in Vancouver. So as you can imagine, the need for communications channels were very strong. There isn't an office or a water cooler to chat at. So being able to have those communications channels were really important. I think the big thing with IR Labs is we're trying to do investor relations differently. So, finance and investor relations, very traditional, very, they're not new industries. There's ways of how you do things. And what we're trying to do is be different. And a huge compliment that we receive from our clients often is the human element and how we communicate. We're all on social media. We're all receptive and approachable and responsive. But, that doesn't just, it's not just about having that with our clients, it's about having it with our employees as well. Like I lead a team of 8 people, and half are in Toronto, half are in Vancouver. So even from the internal side, like it's so important to have those pieces, being able to communicate any kind of company change or these are new processes that we're rolling out. It's really important. So being able to kind of have those channels, particularly as Denise mentioned through COVID, which is when our company started, it was even more important to have those things in place.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And even just, beforehand for you, Paige, what were you all doing? I know that you're a relatively young company, but starting out, what were the channels that you were using for communicating?
So we had Microsoft Teams, we had, different areas where we would have department meetings and more traditional, like, we've set this up a meeting series and that's when we all connect. But I think now the beauty of having joined when I did is being able to see, implementing new channels like WhatsApp groups or more social channels on Teams, being able to see that impact and seeing how everybody approaches each other differently. It's almost helped us work together better to be able to have, the inside jokes or, the deeper knowledge of each other's lives.
I love to hear that. That's kind of exactly it, isn't it, for communications? Even the small things add up to create an entirely different environment, which is amazing. I do have a quick follow-up question for you both. Once you had identified the need, and I think for Denise, it was super, super clear, Paige as well, especially because of COVID, what was sort of the journey there? After you had said, oh, we definitely need something in place, how did you start going about searching for a tool, or what were the must-haves that you had identified for your organization? And maybe I can start with Denise if that's.
So the way we ended up with StaffBase actually is our chief information officer, before he left his previous company, before coming to BBB, was in the process of working with StaffBase to hire the solution for his previous company. He ended up leaving, so he never saw it through. I don't know if they still have it or whatever happened with it. But when he started, then COVID hit. He said, I really do have, I went to him and I said, we need a tool that can do X, Y, Z. Can you help me? And he said, actually, I was about to implement it at my previous company. And so I do know an account executive. I do know, this process. They seemed great. So we weren't starting from scratch. Fortunately, he had some previous knowledge. We assembled an internal team of different stakeholders, of people with interest, and started the process from there. But fortunately, we didn't have to start at ground zero, researching a bunch of different companies.
Yeah, that's really great and advantageous. What about you, Paige? Was that a similar experience, or were you, as Denise say, starting from zero?
Yeah, it's interesting. I feel like having worked for a lot of very established companies, I'm often coming into a situation where, somebody's passing the baton or there's already a strategy in place. How do we, optimize it or make it different, evolve it? And so coming to Ayr Labs where that need was really there, I feel like it was about assessing everything, all of the needs, employees, what do they need? And it can be really overwhelming at first, to be honest, because you're like, oh my goodness, like I need this, I need this, I need that. And one thing I would share for anybody who is in that situation and going through it, I would say, your first ingredients are, like with internal comms, transparency, empathy, connection. Your employees need to feel safe and valued and heard to thrive. And so now that we're a little bit more on our feet and more established, I can see where, looking back, I think there's this, oh my goodness, there's this panic to get all of the right channels and the right platforms in place. You will figure it out. It takes a little time to figure out the right needs, but just as long as you have those initial ingredients, that is okay. That is the essential, and everything that you build on top is just going to help that flow through the organization.
I love that. Yeah, absolutely. Even if it's starting simple, you can always build out from there. And that does kind of move us into the next question that we have. So once you have something in place, like let's talk about the benefits of investing in these digital tools, what you get out of it, what your employees get out of it, and how it would help the organization overall. Maybe Denise, if you have any insights here about BBB.
One of the benefits for us is safety. It's important that our employees can talk to one another quickly. And again, we did learn that with COVID, but if you also think about, where our facilities are located in Mexico, it is on a coastline. We have 3 different factories there. Hurricanes. My office is on, our headquarters is on the Alabama coast, actually. Hurricanes is also another issue. If there's a power issue, a water issue, I don't know what it might be. But for safety, we can quickly talk to everyone who's on the platform. And so that is one of the huge benefits for us. And it doesn't take a lot of convincing, or at least it didn't at BBB, when you go to your CEO and say, these are the risks if we can't talk to our employees. And this is a way we can keep our team safe. Safety is one of our core values. Also, teamwork, the collaboration, working together, sharing accomplishments, sharing recognition is also one of our biggest benefits.
Yeah, 100%, and pretty clear cut in that way, which is fantastic that you'd have a solution to solve for that, and hopefully keep everybody a bit safer. What about you, Paige?
Yeah, I would say, like, when I started with Ayr Labs, like I think one really crucial need was we all work across multiple time zones. None of us are in the same place. How do we stay connected and how do we have fun? Like, not only are we delivering for our clients, but that's where digital tools really came in for me, was seeing, us implement like a virtual water cooler, or, a different style of event, or a care package that everybody opens at the same time. All of that, we have to thank from digital tools, like being able to create different chats in different areas, or, different voting systems and fun activities for everyone to have. I feel like that's where I really noticed things changing. Like, we have a huge team of superstars, but where the social elements came in, it wasn't just about the company updates. It wasn't just about the growth. It wasn't about all the new clients. It was about, somebody got a puppy, or my colleague just had a baby. So we're all discussing that. And, being able to be part of those moments, I've noticed our team, well, our organization as a whole has really gelled better, but particularly with my team, everybody's kind of having those opportunities socially now. So it's like we know each other better and we're working together better, and everything is just flowing wonderfully now.
Yeah, I can only imagine that, especially fully remote, cultivating that sense of culture and well-being and community is super, super important. And having a place to do that is like probably one of the top priorities, I think. And I know that Denise, we had talked before, you had mentioned as well that BBB was quite social, and you all had some like events and things that you had planned. I mean, how did this impact your culture over there?
Yeah, we do have a social wall, and it's good to see, if somebody has a baby or somebody's children with their somebody's coaching a soccer team, they'll post their soccer team or something like that. We did something not too long ago where we, company-wide, globally, everybody could share their family if they wanted to. So it was interesting to see. It was really cool to see the person at home, but also the person, the person with their family. I think I previously told you all that we have a lady that we work with, I respect tremendously. She moves 200 miles an hour, never misses a beat. I don't think she sleeps. And she has 3 kids. I had no idea she has 3 kids. But I saw that picture. She made a little post about her family, the things they're interested in. I thought it was super interesting to see that side of her. She lives in Houston, so we don't get to see each other on a daily basis, which is why I didn't know that about her home life. It just showed me she was a complete rock star in every way, shape, or form. We also have, what was the other part of your question? I'm sorry, I got to talking about her and I completely forgot.
No. I think that's great. And also, what like a boon for you all that the employees sort of like that reciprocal thing where the employees feel that trust enough to want to like show more of themselves. I think that's such like a great indicator of culture. But that was most of the question. It was like how the tools themselves had impacted the culture of BBB.
Something to follow along that I was going to mention is we have, a company culture, but each individual company or country or location has something that they identify with, that might be unique to them. Our employees in Mexico, very strong family values, and community and family means a lot to them, and it's very important to them. And so they host different events down there with their families. They host different internal events with their children. Sometimes they do like American Idol-esque singing contests and things like that, where people vote company-wide. It's really cool to see the things that are important culturally in different parts of our company.
I love that. That's so cute. I absolutely adore that. And the fact that you can become as customized and personalized as you are to each different sort of sector of people, I think is supremely important. And I love that. The next question that Kelly has so generously popped us up is, has your comm strategy changed after implementing the digital tools? So starting with Paige, from where you were to where you are now, what has changed, or is there anything that has surprised you along the way in terms of what's come into focus or priority?
Yeah, I think from an internal comms perspective, it's about like we're seeing the organization. Like initially, it was 2 co-founders who, started everything day one. We're doing every job day one, and so to see that change over time, where we're bringing in new team members who are experts in certain areas to take things on, including myself. That need for internal comms down the way. At the beginning, everyone was involved in every scenario, every decision, every client, and that that only works for so long. So the need to communicate internally has really changed, just in how the business has changed as a whole. But I would say where the strategy on the internal side has really changed is, as we adopted new digital tools or new methods, that's been responded to so significantly that we're still looking at ways that we can take that a next step further. So for example, like even for my team, what are activities we can do virtually? There's a music app that we can all create playlists together and listen to as a team through the week as we're working. Like there's so many different ways to make things more social and approachable. I would say like a big thing around that is I think when employees and team members enjoy working together, everybody stays together. I've noticed in the short time that our labs has been thriving in the last couple of years that we've existed, I've noticed there's been very low turnover. We make decisions often as a team. When something arrives, we all know about it. Transparency has been huge here, which I've really admired with the organization, just in how quickly investor relations works. It can be really hard to keep everybody inundated all the time, but I would say increased cadence of communication for sure, and just the quality of that social time and how to continue to curate that in a way that is consistently changing and fresh.
Yeah, I definitely love that. I'm curious if you could elaborate a bit more about maybe the switch from a smaller team to growing, and then not everybody is involved in all the decision making, and maybe how your communication changed from there.
Absolutely. So I feel like in previous organizations, I would support the CEO, key messages, how we communicate across the broader group, right? With this organization, initially it was very flat. So everybody knew everything all the time, which was fantastic. But as the organization structure changes, that was a little bit of a shift for my co-founders in particular, who were just used to everything all out all at once. It was more, there's now been more thought of like, okay, if you're in the meeting, all of this makes sense. But if you are an individual that wasn't in that meeting and you're hearing this, does that give the same connotation? Does that key message need some nuance? So I think we're kind of now starting to move a little bit more into retaining that community element and making sure everyone's close and aligned and informed, but also just adding a bit of polish of, being able to talk about key messages and what do we want our takeaways to be. That's been increasingly important as we go.
100%, definitely. And then for Denise, has your comm strategy changed much after implementing the tools? I know that you spoke a bit about the culture and that sort of segmenting, but from the onset of getting these tools post-COVID or right in COVID?
Yeah, what really surprised me with the platform is I remember when we started, I thought email addresses, easy. We can reach those people. We can contact them. I can talk to them enough that they'll download the app. They'll participate. I thought, how in the world are we ever going to get the people without phones or without email on this platform? How are we going to ever get more than 10% of them to agree to do this? And our plants, there's very high turnover. It's not unique to our plants. It is where it's common across all plants. They move for different incentives and whatnot. So I am interested in looking up as a side note, our retention numbers down there. I haven't looked at that. I'm very interested in that. Paige and I actually talked offline just a little bit about that. But we actually have, my goal is to get 20% of them on the platform. I thought, that'd be success initially in my mind. And we got 50% of them, and we didn't really have to pull teeth. I think they craved it just as much as we wanted to implement it, if that makes sense. And previously they had they had communicated messages. I mentioned word of mouth, but there were TVs and break rooms and whatnot that would just rotate messages and signage to them. And so I was pleasantly surprised by that. Also, our strategies changed in a bit in which there's more two-way communication that's possible and that happens now. Before we disseminated a message, somebody might come and we'd talk about it a little offline or something of that nature. We do have a remote workforce as well. Our sales team is all remote for the most part. The two-way communication with our Ask the CEO features, just general comments. If you don't have somebody's phone, we use the chat feature a lot to talk with each other. And so it has been nice to see the two-way communication start to flourish.
Yeah, definitely love that and hear that a bunch as well. Some people are pretty locked into a top-down communication. I mean, whatever works for your workforce, but I think you two show that having that two-way communication is something that can be a big boon for the company themselves. And I guess the follow-up, Denise, would be in terms of the adoption rate being at like 50, do you think that the two-way communication, the social aspect has a part to do with that? Or what are the things that are pointing you to the direction of, oh, this is why people were excited to sign up?
Depends where they are. So in Mexico, absolutely. The contest, it's not even that, that they think, oh, if the plant closes, I need to know. Like, they're not thinking along those lines. They want to participate. They want their kids to participate. So it's the contest for them that really increases the adoption. They have to campaign for votes and stuff. It's fun for them. And so they try to get, they go, Paige, Alex, come join this app, vote for me, And so they are becoming advocates of it as well. Mm. And it really depends on the location. You have our sales team who's located throughout the U.S. and theirs is to receive information. Whereas in Mexico, like I said, their motivation is a little different.
I love that. That's so cool to have the employees at that point advocating for that particular tool and almost like doing part of the work for you, which is really nice.
Yeah, it took some time. What we had to do was come up with creative ways to how can we turn them into advocates. We'll try it, see if it works. It could fail, and but not much risk associated with it if it does. But they love it, especially when they get their kids involved. We also had a sustainability at home contest for everyone, and they implemented different sustainability initiatives and shared pictures with what they did with their families. And I think the guy who won, he and his son built a water filtration system. I would have never known something like that. Never knew he had an interest in something like that. I don't personally know him, but it was so cool to see, and he was so proud. He had his son with his certificate, and it was so cute. But it's just different ways, creative thinking to get people involved, and that originated actually in our Alabama office, and he's in Mexico.
I love that. I'm going to steal that story and tell people all about it. That's so cool. I really, really love it. All right. So Paige, did you have anything to add, or we can move on? We have another question that popped up for us.
Yeah, let's do it. Let's go to the next one.
Perfect. So how do you justify the cost of your comm strategy to leadership? And we can start with Paige there if you like.
Definitely. I would say, like, with us being fully remote, like the need for a strong comm strategy and have it be engaging and kind of, as Denise mentioned, like a two-way conversation, so important. So justifying a strategy that kind of addresses that, there is not much pushback, which is appreciated. I would say though, like, one of the things that, like, I know we've talked on this call a lot about retention and the importance of connection and feeling valued and safe, heard. I've actually received a lot of feedback we've been hiring quite a few new team members, and feedback we receive really often is how kind and connected everybody is when you enter. So, I had an intern on board about 2 weeks ago, and I'm checking in and I'm like, hey, like, how's your journey going? It's been a couple of days. Do you have any questions, confusion, anything I can help with? And she's like, everyone here is so nice. Like, people were connecting in, they were asking about where she lives and what she likes to do, and what does her role look like. Maybe we'll get to work together. If you have any questions about capital markets, or if you have questions about media relations, I'm over here, come find me. And so I think, being able to have the strategy in place that already facilitates that level of connection, not just from like senior leaders to all of the different groups and departments, but even just between each other, like, it really helps to amplify our brand and our community, who we are. Like, we are all very communicative. We're all very plugged into social media. We're all really about, or, somebody is sick. It's not uncommon to get like 6 or 7 messages that say, hey, I heard you were sick. What's going on? Do you need anything? Like, it just helps to kind of amplify that culture and what we're aiming to achieve here at IR Labs. So that's kind of how I would justify. I know that's a long-winded answer, but
No, I think that's great, and it's good to hear that there wasn't strong pushback to that need was identified and then corroborated by your leadership. And I think, Denise, you might have said something similar where it was like the need was real and leadership was like, yes, we absolutely identify with this. Is that correct? Or?
Yeah, fortunately, I didn't have to build a strong business case and walk into a room and convince a room of people. The business reason after COVID was obvious and necessary. So I didn't have to do a lot of arm twisting to convince anyone to do this.
Which is lovely to hear. I mean, in your previous positions or in your experience in the past, do you think that there was, from there to now, like maybe more reticence to accept the need for this type of comm strategy, or did you find pushback in sort of previous experiences?
So this is actually my first, I would say, quote unquote, go round with a company like this and a need like we have. And so I don't have, as far as this specifically is concerned, previous experience to even base it on, to give you an example.
Well, I'm happy that you have a good experience then, and we'll just keep it going.
Yeah.
What about you, Paige?
Yeah, I'd say to add to that, like, I think, in past organizations I've worked at, there's intranet, there's, multiple, technology on platform on every option. And I think with working at our labs where we're a bit smaller and we're kind of, scaling our processes and everything up as our client base grows, it's been really interesting to see, like, I've even just as a learning experience for me, like being able to see, okay, I'm used to like bigger organizations where we have all of these tools. How do we make this, for what it is today, but how do we also make it for what it's going to be tomorrow? So being able to look at the long-term plan of, at some point we are going to need a full-scale intranet. We are going to need a bigger digital solution, like even like with Staffbase, even like just looking at different ways to kind of evolve everything. I've also really enjoyed hearing Denise's experience because I feel like just as a younger company, like hearing some of what you've had to say has been really interesting in terms of how I view like our trajectory and where we're looking to go. So it's been really, I always love these conversations.
You'll definitely benefit from having it from the start. Like us, we were founded in 1987. We grew really fast, but we kind of had to implement it retroactively. So the fact that you and your company have implemented it on the front end in a proactive manner, you're going to benefit greatly.
I'm happy to hear that. I think one thing too, and Denise, you were saying something earlier, like it's lovely to not, there will be moments as communicators when we're, making a case to senior leadership and it's like, oh, but, over here, like, there's all of these nuances, like, look at these. But it's lovely having, connected, emotionally intelligent leadership that understands the value of our employees, understands the importance of connectivity, and making sure that it's not just about profit, it's not just about client base and being able to like build it up. It's also about what we're doing behind the scenes as team members and how we're connecting with with one another. And even just as communicators, it's also about storytelling, but being able to have all of that becomes more possible when we have approachable, emotionally intelligent, receptive leadership. So I'm glad we both have that.
Yep, very fortunate.
Absolutely. Not having to pick apart all the like intangible things that are necessary, but having people trust you and know that you're on the right track. So now that you have your digital tools in place, how are you currently identifying that your comm strategy is working? I mean, this could go into a conversation about metrics, about, I mean, we sort of talked about the qualitative ways, I guess, socially that, things are headed in the right direction. We touched a bit on adoption. But for you, Paige, in terms of the comm strategy you and your team have set out, how do you identify that it's working?
It's been really interesting. I feel like a lot of it is, as you mentioned, qualitative. Is everything running effectively? Is everyone having fun and getting along? Are clients happy? Yes, yes, yes. Fantastic. But I think, on top of that as well, like I really love data. And so being able to implement things like surveys and, not just having, I try to have a very approachable, mentality to feedback. I expect feedback from my team just as I give feedback to them, and I benefit greatly from that transparency and I appreciate it. But surveys, I find it's just, I think it's just a different mode of communication and sorting that feedback out to be able to kind of get a lot of information that some of which can be surprising, like being able to look at one that had like suggestions of like what we could do to expand. Like we have town halls, we have Q&As, we have like more senior leadership meetings where it's most of us that have direct reports. But somebody suggested, hey, like for Canada Day, what if we did this? And it was like, what? Oh, like I love that. That's a great idea, and that would bring everybody closer together no matter where they are. So I would say like surveys are a great way to gauge if what you're doing in your strategy really is working, particularly from your team members' point of view.
Perfect. And Denise?
Yeah, retention and also engagement and use is big. I mentioned I thought, how are we going to get 20% of the people on this platform? And I look up and we have 50, and it really wasn't something that we had to fight and claw to make happen. So adoption is a big piece of it, and also like along the lines of what Paige said is feedback and suggestions. When you start to see that your employee base and essentially your audience it understands the platform and says, hey, this is good. I see an opportunity. Maybe we could use it for XYZ. We recently had somebody, I think we recognized our CV sales team for something. And he said, I'd love to do I think it'd be cool if we did like an employee spotlight where it's not people, it's not just, hey, this popped up, let's recognize somebody, but let's put like a formal program together where anybody from the company can be recognized. Anybody at any location can say, hey, this, Sam did XYZ, and we think it'd be great to acknowledge them. So let's not just recognize the sales team or the people that we fortunately always do have the opportunity to recognize, but let's start recognizing everyone for different accomplishments that they have at every level in the company. And so I say that to say that shows that our feedback like that shows that our audience has really understands some of the use of the platform, but also understands how to elevate it and take it to the next level, to do it in a different way. And so that shows me that it's working.
Yeah, I love that. It sounds like across the board for both of you, the sense of onus that the employees can feel within the tool itself and within the direction of the company, the strategies for comms. Once employees start engaging in a way that it's almost like they've taken on some part of the responsibility to elevate everything together with you all. I think that's amazing, and it seems very, very ideal,
Yeah.
at least in my eyes. And I had a quick follow-up question. So you have all these sort of indicators and even hard data that your comm strategy is working. How are you communicating that to your leadership? Or do you find that your leadership is asking for like, I'd love to see the metrics of, the progress of your strategy?
In the beginning, I'll start. In the beginning, our CEO actually took interest in it. I'd love to see the progression of adoption. So I broke it down by location for him. And then after a while, he saw it was taking off. He said, I don't need to see this anymore. Everybody's doing well. Everybody's adopting it. You guys are doing a great job implementing it. It's not something that I need to be updated on all the time anymore, because he saw that it was something that was trending positively.
Mhm. I would say similarly on our side, like there is great interest in the employee experience and how that's going. There's also an intense level of trust where, things are going really well, keep going. Come to us if you have something new that you'd like to implement, but just keep this moving. This is great. And so I love that. And they've been really receptive as well to the idea of, if you want to brainstorm this or you want to bring a few ideas here and there, like let's do that, which has felt really approachable from my employee experience as well. Typically, I bring ideas to the CEO and these are my recommendations and it's done. But to be able to have that back and forth and even, pros and cons of everything together, very new experience for me, but very approachable and very helpful sometimes in terms of just getting that extra collaboration in.
Yeah, it seems like the two-way comms is really bleeding into everything, and even having
Yeah.
CEOs or leadership be the ones to either put out videos or even be on town halls and things like that. That's awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. I would say like when I arrived at IR Labs, both co-founders, like feedback we get often about our firm is we are the next generation of IR. We do things a little bit differently. We're way more digital. We're way more in tune and connected. And, we're all on social media. We will all be, it's lovely. And when I got here, I was amazed at how our two co-founders just threw themselves into everything, whether it be, making videos of themselves, kind of giving updates, just 5-minute quick update of how the company's doing, or even just, hey everyone, it's Canada Day. I don't know why I keep going for Canada Day today.
Because it's important. Love Canada.
Yeah. Sure. Representing. But
Hey,
yeah, just being able to see like, sorry, what was that?
I had a follow-up question for you. Do you find that that is after, I don't remember when you said you guys implemented staff-based, but do you find that COVID increased the adoption rate for your executives or your leadership wanting to be on video because they were almost forced to, essentially?
Yeah, that's a great question. And it's funny because I started the pandemic at another organization and then I moved over mid-pandemic. So being able to kind of speak from both sides has been really interesting. I'd say video overall has become way more important. I would say at our company, like because we're very, like from an internal side, we're very virtual, we're very remote. So any kind of behind the scenes, like our co-founders and like most of us honestly as a team, when we go to a client meeting, there's often a behind the scenes photo, whether it's to share on social media externally or to share internally, hey, this went really well and everyone's happy. Or even just, both of my co-founders are at 2 different summits today. They are, attending 2 different activities, and I know that today will be just absolute, like all of the photos are going to fly in, all of the videos are going to fly in. So I think it's definitely part of our culture, like externally and internally, that we have a lot of video. I also think that just seeing where we're going, particularly AI, AR, like there's such an influence right now with visual, that I think, we can see the data turning towards video way more in future. Like even just looking at, demographics like Gen Z are very receptive to video. That will be a huge impact for how communicators build and shape their storytelling in future decades. So I'd say video overall is impactful for everybody. But you're right, like COVID really catalyzed that in a big way.
Yeah, I was thinking while we were talking, we're both sitting here saying we were fortunate we didn't have to go in and, build a strong case, twist any arms, or convince anyone that this was a good idea. And while you were talking, I was thinking, why is that? Is it a result of COVID, a result of the times, and maybe COVID made people realize how truly important their people and employee base are, so they understand that they need to invest in them, and it's not something that's really negotiable. And I was just thinking, you know, why is that? You know, if you, Alex, had asked us that question 10 years ago, I'm sure we'd have had a different answer.
Oh yeah. Like, do you remember, like, it's so funny being in communications and seeing all of the evolution. Like, do you remember having to justify the case for Facebook or, you know, any of the things that we now like I remember having a CEO that was like, what is Instagram? Like, I don't know. Like, this seems like a passing trend. And it's like, no. You know, as communicators, we're always having to justify the new thing. And that's a really important part of being responsive to what's in the market and what's going to help us. But I would say, like, for anybody, like, I know Denise, you and I have really fortunate experiences. I would say for anybody on the call that, you know, is having a little more trouble justifying something, I would say really make the case with data if you can, but also, you know, speaking to retention or onboarding, you know, the reputational side of it as well can really help build the case. I know in times where I've experienced that, where I've had a harder time and really have to go into the detail, I find that those points are often really helpful for me when I'm trying to, you know, bring on a new tool or really trying to receive support on the internal comms strategy side of things.
Those are great points, Paige. Thank you. Very helpful for anybody, I think, that if they're meeting a bit of pushback or having to justify things. You brought up something that I also kind of wanted to ask Denise about to follow up on. Perhaps maybe I'm making assumptions, but with a company that's more based in like manufacturing, perhaps you have more intergenerational folks that comprise your organization, and sort of tying in what Paige was saying about, you know, justifying the new thing and the evolution of technology. What about your comms strategy has had to sort of mitigate those gaps in understanding or gaps of usage in terms of like new technologies?
You know, you make that point, you ask that question, but I don't, I think about the lion's share of our employee base, and I keep talking about Mexico, but that's because the biggest group of our 80% of our employees are there, and the lion's share of those without email are there. And I don't think we've had to account for it. Like, it hasn't really been an issue. I'm trying to think of a scenario, and we haven't had to account for generational differences. Yeah, so fortunately, I don't have an example or a story for you, because it's not something that's presented itself or been a gap.
That's awesome to hear. And I know, Paige, that you had just sort of talked about the tech savviness of your group, and that they're very online. Like, am I correct in assuming that it's not sort of a non-issue for you as well, or?
Yeah, I would say so. Like, I think everyone in our organization, like in past, like there's been like moments where it's like different groups of like different departments have very different expectations, I guess we could say. But I'd say with our labs, like there is this concept going in that it's very digital first. It's very, you know, hands-on, getting involved. So yeah, I would say like we don't really have that as much either.
Yeah, and some of that might be due to staff base in general. So I mean, if you can text on your phone or if you can email, you know, it's not a very complicated platform to learn. You know, the biggest hurdle would be downloading the app, you know.
Yeah, that's an important point too. I think it is made to be pretty intuitive and simple in its UX as well. But our last question, I feel like we've talked about it the entire time. Unless you have any lingering thoughts about the decrease in risks with a digital tool and the increase of engagement. If you do, we can definitely get into it. I have a little back pocket question of my own. And then while we're sort of doing the last question, if anyone has any questions of their own, they can please pop them in the chat and we'd be happy to answer. But yes, do you have any further points about this last question, or can I throw you my curveball?
I think we should go for the curveball.
Yes, here it is. not so, it's a very softball, in fact, but I'm curious about your goals for your department, your communication goals for the future right now with what you have and what we've talked about this entire conversation. What are the next steps, IRLab and BBB?
I would say, oh, Denise, you go ahead first.
No, I'm okay. Okay. I think our biggest next step with staff-based is implementing, I don't know this is the correct term, campaigns, onboarding, that piece of it, the HR piece of it. When it comes to, I'm talking specifically about staff-based and not, you know, beyond that. Like, what more do we want to get out of the platform? And I think it's the onboarding piece, the automation piece of staff-based.
And I would,
sorry, just to follow up,
go for it.
how would that impact things for you all at this point? Having the onboarding piece, is that like, how are people currently onboarding without the campaigns, I guess?
Right now? I would say it is a gap we're trying to address right now. It would be different for Mexico. They're like a well-oiled machine. They have a lot of turnover, so they're used to it. But when it comes to other locations, you know, it's kind of location by location, how they're doing different things. From a corporate standpoint, my personal view is a corporate-led company-wide initiative needs to be implemented and built upon. And I think we could leverage staff-based tools for that.
Amazing. Yeah, well, let's get you going. We'll get you there. And Paige, I'm sorry I cut you off before. Please continue.
Oh, no, it's okay. I was just going to say, it's funny that Denise said onboarding, because that's definitely something on my mind as well. I think with our labs being a younger company, like, the need to have that down. Like, I think the way that we've been doing it so far has been fantastic, but I think having more, actually, as we were discussing earlier, more videos, more, you know, being able to leverage video in a way that any kind of human connection, that's kind of the walkthrough of everything, you know, being able to have that be more focused on connecting rather than, you know, this is how you do this, being able to have more video. When I started, it was very much like you come in, you know, everything is with another person online, and it's fantastic. But I think just at the level of growth that we have, like, we're bringing a new client on every week or two. So we're going to need to get quicker at things and find ways to kind of still build that connection while making sure that's a smooth process. I'd say in terms of your question of like what's next in strategy, I would say the other element is I want to keep finding things that are fun. I want to keep finding ways for us to connect as a team. I would also really like, and I've been reading a lot of articles on this recently, but implementing a more, there's already a lot of transparency, and like our team is really open with one another, which I love. I've been reading a lot about the power of a coaching culture, which is not just, you know, I'm a people leader, I'm giving coaching and feedback all the time, but how are my employees giving feedback and coaching other employees and team members? Like, how can we kind of integrate that further into our culture? So for example, like our new intern came in, you know, the previous iterations or seasons of interns, that person reports to me. That person runs tasks and projects by me. But this summer, we are doing something where everyone on my team basically has the intern reporting to them for certain activities. And it's an exercise for them to kind of get into the culture, or pardon me, the coaching style feedback. How do you give it? How do they receive it? And being able to kind of work on those skills. I think that's a huge component of internal culture and communications that's really important. And I think having that integrated as a muscle all of the time for everyone, I think is going to help with a lot of the growth that we're experiencing.
100%. I love that. I think allowing people to, you know, stretch their legs in a different kind of arena, or hone in on a skill that might not be entirely necessary to their current job, but for their future job, would be a benefit for them is great forward planning and great enablement. Unless Denise has anything to follow up with, I'm going to give a 5 seconds to anyone in the chat if they want to ask a follow-up question. You know, get to your keyboards quickly. But if not, I will close out and say that it was so lovely to spend time with you both today, to hear about your experiences and chat about comms. And honestly, just it's just really lovely to hear the successes that you all are having, to be honest. I think that like your employees should be feeling very lucky to work with you. So that's really great to hear. For everybody watching today, thank you for joining us. I wanted to sort of plug our next webinars. Kelly's going to put them down below for you, but Navigating the Changing Landscape of Intranets on May 31st, and then definitely Not Your 90s Intranet on May 17th, which is a great one that I'm excited for. But those are my sort of closing remarks. Isn't Denise, Paige, if you have any last words for us today or bits of wisdom?
Yeah, I would just say thank you for having us, and for anyone, you know, who's looking to work through this topic, you're in the right direction, you're in the right place, and it just takes time. So if you're worried about, you know, I don't have all of these things yet, you're in the right place. Take your time, and you will get there.
Yeah, echo everything Paige said. And thank you guys for organizing this, and thank you for having us.
Yeah, it's been an absolute pleasure. Obviously, everybody can reach out to myself, and I'll even offer up Paige and Denise to make some connections. But it was lovely chatting with everyone today, and we hope you have a wonderful rest of